Ladies and gentlemen, the RTX 2060. Incredible. That GPU, that entire demonstration was being run on this GPU here, the RTX 2060, the long-awaited RTX 2060. It is here. So the RTX 2060, 52 teraflops of tensor core processing, 5 gigaarrays per second, 6 gigabyte frame buffer, G6, the fastest memories in the world. Okay? That's what it took to play what you just saw, Battlefield 5, with ray tracing on. Now let's take a look at the performance. What you were looking at, if RTX was off, the frame rate would be about 60 frames per second. A really fantastic experience. Really fantastic experience. Battlefield 5, 1440p, 2 megapixels, on a 2060, over 60 frames per second. Now, when you turn on ray tracing, this is what happens. And for many, they were somewhat disappointed by that, even though it was so much more beautiful. And so, as you know, we've been thinking about this for quite some time. And we know that ray tracing is computationally intensive, and it's going to continue to be computationally intensive. And that's the reason why we added the right proportioning between ray tracing cores, RT cores, and tensor cores, so that we could apply DLSS to this, and as a result, ladies and gentlemen, this is my favorite demo right here. Whoop. That's my favorite demo. That is good technology. How do they do that? Just like that, DLSS. It looks beautiful, and because that network, that DLSS network, was trained from and learned from so many high-resolution images and trained on this supercomputer, just tons and tons and tons of examples, this huge neural network has become smarter and smarter, and it can predict what is the best pixel to generate. And as a result, reduce the amount of computational load so that we could reduce the resolution and then use DLSS to infer a much more beautiful high resolution. The new Turing GPU has a brand new shader architecture, as I mentioned. We double the amount of operations that we can simultaneously process. We can now process integer operations as well as floating point operations at the same time. We also doubled our cache. And we have because we unified our shared memory and L1 cache, we have the ability to double that as well. So we would expect the performance boost relative to previous generations to be quite substantial. And as you can see, and with all of the other shader technology that you've seen published about Turing, for example, variable rate shading, multi-view rendering, mesh shaders, and just the hundreds of new improvements that we put into our shader technology, shader architecture, you could see that the performance on any games is dramatically higher. But what's really interesting is this, and we would expect this. As games become more and more complex, as their shaders become more and more complex, we would see a trend line of Turing over Pascal to continue to advance. And the reason for that is these shader programs are getting larger and larger and larger. And it has the ability to perform up to almost 2x on Wolfenstein 2, which takes advantage of variable rate shading that we have in our GPU. I'm pretty excited about Doom Eternal coming out this year using the same engine. And so I think that Turing turned out pretty well. What do you guys think? Well, turns out gamers need more performance than ever. if you plotted out all of the games that we have in GFE, these are all the games that our GeForce gamers are playing over the last several years. In order to sustain 60 frames per second at 1080p, you would have to triple the amount of computational capability over the course of the last 4 to 5 years. Meanwhile, resolution has increased from 1080p 60 hertz to 1440p 144 hertz, which is the reason why if you take a look at the number of X60 class, 60 class gamers continue to grow over the last several years. In fact, it almost tripled over the last several generations in the last 4 years. And so if you take a look at the 2060 now, compared to the installed base of GeForce, this is kind of what it looks like. I mean, this is pretty extraordinary. A RTX 2060 is higher performance than a 1070 Ti. A 2060 is higher performance than a 1070 Ti. And if you take a look at the rest of the installed base, I took the 3 most popular GPUs, the 960, 970, and the 1060, which are in abundance in our installed base. It represents about a third of our installed base. The step up is really quite extraordinary. And so 2060, higher performance than a 1070 Ti, which is in the market for about $449, $450, and about a third of our installed base opts for the X60 class and above. The 2060 was really created to bring all of those installed base to next generation. 2060, really fantastic performance. Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to tell you that the 2060 is available for $349. $349. You can enjoy next generation gaming. 52 trillion tensor flops, 5 gig arrays, 6 gigabytes of G6 memory, $349. Perfect for the entire installed base. But that's not all. I got a special gift. We have a special bundle. We're going to bundle with 2060 and 2070. You get either Anthem or Battlefield 5. So you can enjoy DLSS or DLSS and ray tracing on Battlefield 5. And with 2080 and Ti, you get Anthem and Battlefield 5. Incredible value. The 2060 is here now. The number of 2060 graphics cards you're going to be able to enjoy and buy all over the world, the designs from all of our AIC partners are just beautiful and exciting. They'll be available on January 15th, next week. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2060 family.